Very welcome, great to see a fantastic crowd here today. Appreciate you coming, and yeah, hope you have a great day and the rain stays away. We'll be a little bit flexible. We're going to go out to the cows and the farm, but we'll be a little bit flexible depending on if it's raining. We'll just get up and we'll walk around and carry on here, then go out. We will go out, but we'll try to time it as we can so we don't all get drowned. So I'm Rayne, Pasture Summit committee member and dairy farmer at Darfield. The dairy sector can be very proud of its willingness to share ideas, to share information and innovation, and in this desire to look after the people in it and to see them progress. The key reasons why Pasture Summit exists as a non-for-profit and why we have these days and events on farms. So big thank you to our hosts Peter and Emma today, and to their staff for hosting us and for sharing their story. And today we're focusing on three key areas which they do exceptionally well, these being tight cost control and very strong profitability, running a simple system, and over time achieving a significant lift in both repo results and the genetic merit of the herd. Before I hand over to Virginia, I'd like to thank our guest speakers, facilitators, and today we have Aidan Gent, General Manager of Rural ASB, Virginia Serra and Heather Donaldson, DairyNZ, Will Green and John Gregan, both committee members and dairy farmers, and the farmers joining the Progression Equity session, Ben and Chloe Smith and Aidan Williams, and we'll have Pete and Emma up there on that too. And thanks, and we also have the thanks to the regional DairyNZ team for supporting the event. So I'd like to thank our generous sponsors, and we have a new anchor sponsor in ASB Bank, so very much appreciated for their support and the willingness to help sponsor us, and our anchor sponsor, other anchor sponsor would be DairyNZ. For our silver sponsors, thank you. Agricom, Balance, Agri-Nutrients, Dairy Holdings, Fonterra, Farm Source, LIC, MPI On-Farm Support, NZ Dairy Exporter, I see Anne Lee here somewhere today, those know me, Ravensdown and Silver Fern Farms. Big thanks to Silver Fern Farms and Farm Source for the barbecue lunch. Please be sure to visit the sponsors, or talk to the sponsors. I haven't seen many stands here, but visit with the sponsors during the lunch break. And on behalf of Pasture Summit, thank you all for turning up today and for participating. As always, we want your participation in today, and we welcome your questions. So please feel free to put your hand up, and just grab a mic when you do so we can all share your question. So over to you, Virginia.
Thank you, Alistair. Yeah, I'm Virginia Serra, as Alistair mentioned. So great to see so many of you here. Sorry about the weather, but probably it's good to have a bit of rain. Anyway, always. Just in terms of health and safety, well, you probably saw the toilets are very visible there at the back, so you can miss them. If, in case of any emergencies, the assembly point, Peter, I assume is in that area there. Probably that looks quite safe and easy to access, so let's make that the assembly point. Well, we will be walking to the paddock at some point, so just be aware it's a working farm. Stay with the group, don't go anywhere you shouldn't be going. And I don't see any kids, but if there are any or people that behave like kids, you keep them with you and keep an eye on them. Trevor, that goes for you. Where did you go? Yeah, we have a first aid kit available in the registration table there, and we do have people from DairyNZ, lovely ladies there, trained, first aid trained. So if you do feel a bit unwell or something happen, you can call on them. And I think that's probably everything here. Yeah, we want to keep, as Alistair mentioned, the day very dynamic. So your questions make that. So please, at any time, we will encourage you to ask plenty of questions. So next thing for me is to introduce Aidan Gent, General Manager Rural Banking from ASB, who will also introduce the day with a few words there. Yeah, fantastic.
Great, thank you. I probably don't need to stand up on these pallets, but I will anyway. Yes, Aidan Gent, I'm the General Manager of Rural Banking at ASB, Northern Dairy Farmer in my spare time, so it's a bit rough to come from a drought yesterday to seeing the nice green grass out the door down here, but to Peter and Emma, you've presented the farm to an incredible standard, so thank you to you and your staff, because I'm conscious it's not the most enjoyable experience having a few hundred farmers turn up on farm, and it's even harder when it's raining to make the farm look good, but you've got the thing dialed in, so well done. ASB, this is our sort of start of a 3-year partnership with the Pasture Summit, which we're quite excited about, because when you think about the core purpose of New Zealand is ultimately turning sunshine, water and soil into protein in less steps than other parts of the world. And we do that incredibly well, but we need to continue doing that well, and that starts and stops with pasture. Every metric you see out there in terms of what global consumers are wanting, we can achieve by ultimately growing and then utilising that pasture as effectively as possible. I just came back from a week in Singapore last week, talking to a lot of food and fibre businesses over there to understand both how they're thinking about buying New Zealand produce, but also how they're thinking about self-sufficiency within Singapore. The one thing that really stood out going over there, I thought it was going to be a story about alternate proteins. They're finding it way too expensive, way too hard to have alternate proteins at scale. What they really want is high quality grass-fed protein. That's what the consumers are continuing to demand. And they see it for poorer parts of society, they'll add some of that sort of fake meat or artificial proteins in, but at its core, it's still a pasture-based demand curve that we're seeing offshore. So that's really exciting when you think about coming back to New Zealand, and probably why you're starting to see, dairy payout, lamb schedule and beef schedule all lining up together. The industry, and there's a lot of young faces in this crowd, which is great to see, a few older ones too, I won't point those out specifically, but the ability for us to share insights is something that we shouldn't take for granted. There's not many companies globally that don't compete with each other onshore, but instead compete with each other offshore. And I think we need to continue to celebrate that, foster it, and also make sure for those of you that are a bit younger in the room getting energised about how you might go and buy your first farm. We've recently announced with Fonterra a first farm buyer scheme that this year we'll be awarding a handful, and hopefully next year a bunch more, $1 million at 1% to help for 3 years to help those first farm buyers get into their first farm. So if you haven't read about that and you're a young farmer wanting to buy a farm, start reading about that please, because I think there's a huge opportunity for banks and industry to be supporting their next generation through. The other part of it is productivity, and New Zealand's got a productivity challenge. We know that food and fibre is the main contributor to GDP outside Auckland and Wellington, and so the way we'll solve New Zealand's productivity challenge is to make sure we're not working harder than the Aussies for the same amount of output is through our food and fibre sector, and that starts and finishes with grass. So really looking forward to today. Great to also see some ASB customers in the crowd, a few ASB customers speaking. For those of you who aren't ASB customers, there's a lot of my team here who are more than happy to talk to you. We don't have a stand. That's because between the sharpness of our interest rates and the cost of sponsoring this, putting a marquee up would just be a little bit too tough. So hunt the team out. They're pretty hard to miss. So I can see Dan and Rhodesy and Coons around Summer and Tim Gray and a few others. So say good day to them. We're here to support. We want to grow the food and fibre sector. And thanks again to Peter and Emma.
Thank you. So now, Peter, where are you? Peter and Emma, you can come here. You don't need to stand in the, come on the stand if you don't want to, but you can. These, they should be working. Emma, you grab another one there. Brilliant. So these are the star of the show today. So what, as Alistair said, we're going to focus in 3 key areas, and we are starting with introducing Peter and Emma as people, and the team, and then the production system, and then start to look into the excellent results they achieve from a financial point of view. There is quite a bit of numbers here. Don't worry, we're gonna go through in detail alongside the story. And all of the numbers except for my untidy flip chart there with a little bit more detail is in the handout. So if you're wondering or you want to check things on things later, everything is in the handout. So just to start and kick off and warm things up, probably always good to start with the people. And so a bit of background about yourselves, both of you. How did you end up here?
I'm Peter. That's Emma. We'll point out our team first.
Yes, brilliant, yeah, thanks.
Farm manager, Brad. Put your hand up, Brad.
He's hiding.
Rayne is next to him, Aidan and Aidan. It's a team. How did we end up here? So I did like an ag science degree at Lincoln. That was 4 years, and then pretty much parents brought this farm in my final year and employed a contract milker for a year, and then I come here in my first season. Yeah, been here since really. Emma come along, second year in, so yeah.
Get them warming up a little bit more, that's okay, and then we'll get some a bit more details in there. And so just in terms of the perhaps focusing a bit on the farm, and sorry, it's a bit awkward for us because the boards are all in the back here. I think first part of this will be these boards mainly here. So Peter, could you give us a bit of an overview of the farm, and there is a map here maybe that can help, and also the support blocks and how the whole business work?
Yeah.
Just as a bit of an introduction.
So yeah, the farm's 323 hectares total. Pretty simple farm, square. It's got 3 pivots, 265 hectares under pivot. A little bit of fixed grid, a little bit of K-line. Yeah, so this farm's Capital Dairies is a company. We lease a 105 hectare support block from my parents. It's a dryland block just up the road. And we're also in partnership with my brother and parents, his wife, he's here somewhere. And another block that we have young stock on, really, Winters is cows. That's a separate company to the side, pretty much. Yeah.
Could you probably, because it's going to be quite useful for them understanding the numbers, how does the whole operation work? So you basically, one of the support blocks you lease, the other one charges grazing, yes, so yeah. This accounting.
Yeah, so it's called OI, the young stock block. So that's a completely separate entity, and it's just run as a commercial operation out to the side. We all have like varying numbers of stock going there, so we just charge commercial rates to keep it all fair between the partners.
So we have, please feel free to ask any questions at any time. I know it takes a little bit of time to get to see the information and start to get some questions in your head, but please feel free to do that, and we'll get a roaming mic to you. Just raise your hand so I'll make sure I don't miss you. Perhaps the next thing, Peter, will be, so this big table here, and sorry, it's a lot of numbers, but it's a summary of most of the time that you've been on the farm, probably all of the time, that you were contract milking and then farm ownership. There is a description, I guess, of the production system in there. So, Peter, and I let you look at the numbers, you have them in your handouts as well, but could you please tell us the system that you're running at the moment, the production system, stocking rate, those high-level things, and perhaps with a focus on what have you changed over the years, because it's great when you're in the same farm for a few years, you start to adjust things and really start to land on where it really works for you, which is, I guess, the system you're running now. So if you could give us a bit of detail on that, and I'm expecting a few questions from you in there, so you help me there with easier for Peter to get the information out.
Yeah, so we're a pasture first system. Definitely focus on utilising the pasture. but we'll also try to like fully feed our cows. So we bring in a little bit of supplement to try fully feed the cows all year round. We're pretty low stocked. We're like a low stocking rate system for a Canterbury farm, or North Otago Canterbury farm. And we've sort of hovered around that stocking rate, come down a wee bit in the last couple of years, but yeah. The main changes from the start, I guess, were like production come up largely from converting some border dikes. We had about 130 hectares of border dikes, converting that to pivots was quite a big change. We've been doing a lot of regrassing since then, flattening out borders, using good grasses. But yeah, it's pretty well just been constant changes in that 9 years really. Irrigation, all sorts of infrastructure. Yeah, and the runoff's come in the last couple of years. Yeah.
So can we explore a little bit more? So production has been around 1,500 to 1,600, or close to 1,600 here, if you look at the time frame. But has come from an increased production per cow. I guess you started with 432, 435, and then nearly 500 kilos, which is probably 100% of the live weight, or close to the 100% of the live weight of the cow. So how did you land on that? We are, for some other people, probably has been pushing the stocking rate, and yeah, so you kind of gone on the more the production per cow.
Yeah. I guess we'd like trying to match that, like everyone, trying to match the pasture supply and the feed demand. We could have gone to a higher stocking rate, but then we'd be feeding out throughout the year. So we're just trying to keep it that we can fully feed the cows, grass first, a little bit of supplement added. It keeps it simple for us. Low stocking rate, we've got a 50 bale rotary, so still 1,000 cows for it. If we were to increase that, would be 1,200 cows or so. Yeah. What's the other parts of that?
Yeah, and just on the supplement side, you probably has been maintained that at a similar level throughout the year. I think the last year probably more around the 500 or 450 kilos per cow. Potentially, I think for some of the numbers we've done for this current season, but it has been around that number. So is that where you think the farm will sit?
Yeah, I think so. Like I'm hoping that as we, hopefully we can continue growing more grass and harvesting that grass with a similar number of cows, or even less. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much try to harvest the grass with the cows.
Perfect. Any questions on the system before we? Yep. Morgan. Mike, coming to you.
Pete, if your supplements are back this year and your milk solids are up, do you put that down to a bit more mowing, or what do you put that down to?
Yeah, I copied you. Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I do like topping, and we have been doing more, and that's just been more for having the time and the machinery to do it, I guess. Yeah, it has been a good season. I felt like we didn't really get the production gains those last couple of years that I felt like we should have seen. Like we've had that dry stock block come on, and we've been able to dribble the cows home over winter, and then it just never, they again wintered real well, coming back good condition, and they're coming back slowly. It never really, production didn't go up heaps, so not sure why that was, but I feel like we're starting to see it now. Obviously that's a target, that 500,000. We're 4,000 solids up, and March we're actually a couple of thousand solids down, so we're more up. But last year we dried off 5 days early because we put a new yard on, so we've sort of got that 492 plus 5 days really.
Yeah, sorry, just a question here, I might have missed it, but just keen to understand calving date and if that's changed, and then what about dry off,
I suppose I'm just curious about days of milk, those two questions.
Yeah, so calving date will pretty well been 21st of October mating, so I guess that's what, 28th of July calving date since the start, but we pushed it back 2 days later this season. We just sort of found we're just running out of grass more and more in that first round, the first couple of rounds. Just as the 6 weeks come up, and then we've been doing the yearling mating as well. They're coming in earlier. So yeah, we have pushed it back a couple of days. Sort of a bit of a trade-off with that 6 week. Your 6 week goes up, and then you lose your days of milk by pushing your calving date later.
Another aspect, just keeping an eye on the questions. Another aspect perhaps you would like to comment on is your strategy with the crops on the milking platform. How does that fit on the system? You've done that from the beginning, I see.
Yeah, we've always had a bit of crop. Yeah, I like the idea of having the early calvers on the platform, because then they got a pretty short winter. We dry them off pretty similar time or same time as everything else, so we can really look after them on the platform. And we started that prior to having the control of wintering, and we've sort of carried it on because we can use that crop for transitioning, let them on to beat. They all get wintered on to beat. And the other thing was, like, it's a dryland block, so we're not that sure of what sort of yields we're going to get. So having the bit up our sleeve on the platform gives us a bit of irrigated, bit of wriggle room to pull levers, I guess.
And yes.
Sorry, just to duck back a bit, just expand a little bit, Pete, on you've changed a little bit, you got a runoff in, and you were saying, well, maybe it hasn't, but you're wintering 200 cows on as it stands. 3 years ago you got the runoff 105 hectares, which you lease, and you've changed a little bit how does that fit in with the farm? What were you doing for wintering before? How does it work now? And the spring bit of it as well, when you're dribbling cows home, it's a bit of a change in things. What's you're saying that production hasn't come through so much as a result, but it's changed the way you're farming a little bit, just to fill that out a wee bit? Yeah,
so I think the production is coming up, but it's just not instant. And you do have seasonal variation, so maybe that first season was like a tougher season or so. But the other parts of that was, before the runoff, we were just wintering out to graziers, and we're coming home pretty early. We weren't like that 200 cows like that is a new thing on the platform really. We had winter crop, but it wasn't constantly 200 at home. So there's sort of 4 hectares that we've gained, I guess, in production. We sped up the rounds in our last round to try grow more grass with those cows getting dribbled home in the spring.
Look like it started to rain again, I think. That's why people are moving. So, yeah. Get closer. It's quite scary, actually. Just to explore a little bit on that as well. You could go.
Because we were dribbling them home, we had more capacity to push things in that first round. So we weren't drying off with as high covers. So we're trying to dry off on a quicker round with lower covers and increase our total dry matter of pasture growing that way. So instead of letting it all go rank through winter, we might have been drying off at 2,000 instead of 2,300, and then that first round got better quality, and I think it does increase total growth there.
Perfect. You may have actually mentioned it, but just to be clear, when you started to keep cows on the platform, what were the main implications for your pasture growth? Did you see any implications?
We were doing the same area in crop, but it was just more for either side, autumn and spring. So I guess we were feeding less in autumn and spring, more over winter. But I think, yeah, the grass growing on the platform's gone up, so that sort of offset that.
Whereabouts is your supplement fitting in? When are you feeding that out?
Yeah, so we feed like a couple hundred tonne of Prolic, and that just goes all year. It's quite a cheap thing, so we're just happy to feed it like a kg of dry matter a day per cow in the shed, so that doesn't get turned off. We're bringing about 200 tonne of PK in the spring, so that's from the first round through to probably the third round, and about 120 tonne or 100 tonne of PK in the autumn, starting now, started a couple of days ago, and a little bit of silage.
We're going to get into quite a bit of the detail of how all of the decisions are done around the pasture management and the feeding a bit on that decision there. So we will get into more of the detail as well. Just looking at some other things around the system. So fodder beet has been the winter crop all the way? Or have you tried different things? Or
No, it hasn't been, no. Yeah, we've done kale.
Kale.
Yeah. Just found the utilisation of fodder beet so good.
Yeah.
Suits, it's a real good dryland crop, so you get good yields, lots of quality, and yeah, mainly utilisation.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more labour requirement trying to manage it, but yeah.
Right. So when did you change to fodder beet, or how was the story there with the crops, and particularly for wintering?
So like those first 5 years or 6 years was outside of our control. It was just what the winter grazier was doing.
Whatever. Yeah.
And then the first year on the purchasing or leasing the dryland block, kale was the only option because we took over in December, so we're quite late taking over. Yeah. So we did kale that year and been fodder beet since.
And no issues, I guess, if you're happy with it?
Yeah, no, there's definitely issues with it, but yeah, we try to manage them the best we can, yeah. But it's, for us in the system, yeah, it works, real well.
Perfect. Just moving, before we move into the numbers and also to give you time to think on some more questions about the system, just in terms of the people on the farm, how it probably has been constant. There was some changes in here in terms of FTE, but how it is organized, Peter. So you're quite involved in the running of the farm, but then what's the structure behind you?
Yeah, I guess Brad's farm manager, and we all just sort of know what we need to do and get on and do it, really. It's sort of the full-time equivalents have changed a bit, and that's just been like with the runoffs and different amounts of development going on here and there, and Emma's come in. She was working in town, now she does more on the farm. So
yeah. And manager has been here for?
Brad's been here, since we've been here.
Right.
9 years.
Makes a big difference. So you must be doing something right there to keep him happy, or? And then the rest of the team, how do you organize the rest of the team?
How do we organise?
Do I see how is the structure?
Yeah, I don't know, we don't really have a real formal structure there. It's just, everyone works together and team effort, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it is working. I'm not gonna spoil Hilda's session with the repro and how it is achieved, but I just wanted to point out that great results in there as well, and they have been improving throughout the years. But we'll get into the detail of that in the session that we focus on the hair. So I'm not gonna go there too much. So should we look at, while you still think about questions, so should we look at the numbers a little bit, because this is probably the most remarkable, one of the very key remarkable things on the farm, which is the results that they achieve, and that probably gives a few more areas you may want to know a bit more. So what we have here, and you have this in your, sorry, hopefully I don't take an eye out, Peter. So you have this on the handout, and basically for the last 2 seasons, which is where we have very good information on daily base for the farm. And this is the dairy farm, Papagayo Dairies, for the 2 seasons. And I compare it with the average for Canterbury to start with. And the farm was significantly better than that. So I used 20%, which is probably the next group I could use for benchmarking. The top 20% for operating profit in Canterbury, which that is, I guess, the top of the top. And the farm performed better. In terms of operating profit per hectare, which is a very good, I know we're not talking about return on asset, but operating profit is a very good way of comparing farms and how they perform from an operational point of view, which is, I guess, what we are looking at in here. And then also quite interesting to see and how is that achieved. The income side of things is a little bit better than the average, particularly for this season, but not than the top 20%. So the reason for the higher profit, significantly higher profit, is not on the income side of things. And we can see production per hectare is around 1,500–1,600. A few other farms achieve more than that. The real reason for the high profit is the cost of production. And it is unbelievably, if we look at this one, this has a few adjustments. So this is the operating expenses. So it has depreciation and a few other things. So if you're thinking about cash cost, the number will be even lower. So if you have done numbers for your farm and you're trying to think how do you compare, this number, operating expenses, includes a few adjustments, but it's probably a very good number to think about and compare. How are you going about it? So significant, nearly $1 less than the top 20%. And for the season before, also a very significant difference. So and probably Peter is going to say I don't do anything different or whatever, but I do want to get into a bit of the detail on how that is achieved. And if you're with me for another minute, and it's going to be very difficult for you guys there, I know, but I just wanted to point out this untidy flip chart, and you can have a quick look when we have a bit of a break, if you like. There is some more detail on the main areas of cost, and I just read it for you. So we have labor, so they have, and this is cost per kilo of milk solids, they have 10 cents less than the top 20% of farmers in Canterbury in terms of cost of labor. When we look at stock, also lower than the top 20%. 10 cents, and just if people think about stock expenses per cow, $190 per cow, and that includes all animal health, breeding, and everything, which is a good link to make when we understand how they achieve the results of mating. Feed significantly lower, and that all of the cost of the support blocks are included. Potentially some of the costs are in some other areas, but it is significantly low cost, nearly $1 less than the top 20%. And then these other 2 groups, other farm working expenses has a few things in there. So I guess a bit lower, and then overheads also, actually a bit, slightly, a couple of cents higher. But really feed, stock, and labor significantly lower. So I would like to explore a bit how this is achieved, because it is really remarkable. And some is about the setup of the system, some is about the cost of some things like irrigation. I know this area, I'm talking to a few people before we started, potentially, yeah, there is a bit cheaper irrigation, but that doesn't explain the significantly low cost. So I really want to unpick that. So don't know what's the best way. Please ask questions, dig about it. If you're wondering, is this included, is that included? Because really will be great to understand how that is achieved. So Peter, let's just because, unless you have another question, I may unpick the labour one. Because people may say you just pay the guys less.
Yeah, you might have just cost me some dollars.
Yeah. So how do you think that is? Why are you at that level?
That's per kilogram of milk solids.
That's per kilogram of milk solids.
Not
We do
total.
have the numbers total. I do have them, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think if you compared us, like labour productivity per kilogram milk solid compared to the top 20%, we'd probably still have that margin, or probably even a bigger margin. Yeah, so I think we're quite productive with our labour units. And that's, yeah, it's probably heaps that go into that. It's a good team to start with, and then it's probably like how the farm's set up, the type of farm. Yeah, we've sort of, over those, I guess, like quite a long time here, so we've had lots of time to make the system easier and easier to operate. It's a simple system to start with, yeah.
Can you give us some examples on those simple systems? Because that's the nuggets that people can actually grab and
yeah, so our grazing management's a simple system. We don't pasture walk or pasture score. The cows go from paddock to the next paddock to the next paddock. We focus on the residual only. So the residual is the most important thing, and cows get shifted to the next break once they've met the residual. And that's everyone on the team decides that when they get the cows out of the paddock in the morning or in the afternoon. We try to set it up so we're only shifting cows during the day, not shifting cows at night. We refence the farm, so we've got 100 metre wide paddocks, sort of the luxury of having a square block with no drains or anything running through the middle. So all the paddocks are 100 metres wide, every post is 12.5 metres apart. So we work everything out in posts. Pretty simple. Cows got 24 posts today, say, and they left a bit behind, so that person makes the decision to give them 23 posts or 21 posts. Yeah.
what role does the infrastructure play on the labour as well in terms of what you were talking about? Simple.
Yeah, well, if you look at it simply, a rotary cow shed's pretty efficient, isn't it? Got one person milking each herd. Yeah, and it's everything. We used to have travelling irrigators. You move that to connecting it on the pivot or putting it in the undersling on the pivot, and you save a massive amount of time every day. A lot of stress. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Putting in an automatic backwash saves 10 minutes in the morning. You don't have to wake up 10 minutes so early. Might cost like $8,000 and install it ourselves, and that hasn't had any issues in the last 4 or 5 years really.
Just to make sure you're not overworking them with the low cost, what's your take? What's your rosters and your take on hours of work? Because we did have a very brief discussion on that.
Yeah, more honest opinion out of them. It's 7-2, 7-2, 7-3. And yeah, typical weeks probably 40, 45 hours I would have thought. But it is. We write our hours down smartly and record it every week. Yeah. We don't. I sort of like pop in and out of the system quite a bit, I guess. So like you always go through periods where it's less people on the farm, or at the moment Rayne's got a broken collarbone. Jen's going home on holiday in a couple of days. So I can come in and out of the milking roster and just try flatten the curve, I guess.
Brilliant. I'm still waiting for questions, so we make sure we do cover what you guys want. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. What sort of milking frequencies are you running? Is it twice a day? What system are you running? Spring and autumn?
Yeah, we do twice a day all year till dry off. Yeah, we do maybe one day once a day. Yeah. That's probably, it's quite as like, walks aren't big, it's a flat farm, simple farm, it allows it, I guess.
Pete, you talked about mowing. How many rounds do you think you mowed this year? And also, do you think that your round lengths are typical of what people use around here?
Good question. Yeah, we've mowed, probably 2.5 rounds I'd say this year, which is quite a bit. And the next part was our round length typical. I'd say we're probably on quite a short round, because we're so low stocked. We're just trying to, we don't need to maximise the growth as much. We're trying to keep the quality as much as possible. So we'd get down to like an 18-day round, 17-day round in end of October, and like we could pretty well hold that for summer. 18 days, 19 days. We 28 posts is pretty typical for us. That's a 21-day round, and then we'll be taking out silage shorter than that.
What role do you see on the stocking rate and the cost of production? Sorry, there was another question there. You go.
Firstly, thanks for putting this on. Like, huge amount of respect for standing up there and putting it out. I'm sure it's not an easy thing, but yeah, credit to you, so thanks for that. Just my question is probably related to your gross income. There was a comment before about you focused on costs and you're lower on the gross income, but you make up for that because obviously I didn't even know a farm work expenses like that was still possible. So that's awesome. But just wondering if you're tempted to put a few hundred kilos of DDG in this year and push the top line, and whether that would enable you to leverage what is clearly a classy tier 1 asset that you've got here.
Yeah, definitely always been tempted to chase the like 2,000 solids a hectare or something like that. I guess like we go back to when I started. Mum and Dad brought the farm. It was 100% loan from the bank, separate entity. I think their first season, $4.40 payout. My first season, $3.90 payout. Been buying heifers, buy Fonterra shares. So like there was never much money in the system, you know what I mean? Like, so that sort of set up the low cost, and I've always run a low cost system. But yeah, it's certainly hard to get too much out of it. And then going back to if we were to increase, it's sort of always like, if you're in that low cost system and you're chasing that it's sort of hard to strive away from it because you never really know what the payout's going to be till pretty late in the season. If you look at it like last 5 years, Fonterra, they normally do a $1.50 band at the start of the season, May to the next season. I think 4 out of those 5 seasons, it's been outside of that band. So unless you're like locking in futures or something, it's pretty hard to, can't chase it at the start. You could chase it at the end, but then your like substitution and your response from those supplements isn't as high as well, and you've already set your stocking rate. Our cows are already pretty well fed, so at 3.2 cows a hectare, if we were to bring in more supplement than we currently do, we'd probably be eating a lot less grass, so there might not be a great response.
What about putting on a bit more nitrogen and going up to 190, Pete?
Yeah, so that's what we did this season. We've had 2 years at like 150 something, and that was just trying to keep under the 190 per paddock with someone else spreading the fert, contractor spreading the fert. So we own our own spreader this year, and we're just trying to get that heat map very close to 190 each paddock. Because nitrogen grows grass and quality grass too.
Pete, I'm just tracking back to the mowing one again too. I'm just interested, outside of infrastructure being one sort of concern around lifting stocking rates slightly, would that, I'm just trying to get my head around an extra mouth to control the grass versus a mower. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that'd be pretty typical thinking, eh? Like that seed head, even if you had 50 more cows, that seed head, you're still going to need to top it off a bit, I'd say, especially in November, especially around heading day. Like the way I look at it is like a lot of energy goes to maintenance, and so if we can increase the energy to production, and like it sort of reflected that in the years we were slightly more cows, we did slightly less production, and slightly less cows, we did slightly more production. If we were to go up to say like pretty typical 3.8 cows a hectare, it's another 0.6 cows. Average cow eats like 2 tonne of dry matter just for maintenance. So it's 1.2 tonne a hectare would be feeding just for maintenance. So that's the side I look at. And then also in the financials, like a lot of them are directly related to, like your farm work expenses, a lot of that is directly related to your number of cows. So labour's pretty well, number of cows. Your wintering, your young stock, it's all on number of cows. Animal health, number of cows. Fertilisers not. Most of them are. Yeah.
Question. Just by looking by the window, we saw your fixed grids, and looking on your in-calf rates, there's a drastic increase on in-calf rates. Do you think the fixed grid helped you guys a bit on that? Because what I'm thinking, do you think it helps your guys to just focus on the cows instead of shifting irrigators? And second is, do you think there's a big advantage on putting your effluent on your pivot?
Yeah, so I think like probably get into this later, but the key things for me for the in-calf is the energy surplus 3 weeks before mating and then through mating, and then the picking cows there on heat. I don't think fixed grid would add too much influence for our system because we've put in like 18 hectares of fixed grid, so it wasn't like a huge amount of labour going into shifting that K-line. Yeah. The other part was, sorry, I lost that. Was the other part of the question?
Effluent.
Oh, the effluent and the pivot. Yeah, effluent for the pivot is great. Yeah, fantastic. That's yeah, grows a lot more grass and more area. Get over the better. Yeah.
Peter, just a question back to the income side of it for a minute. Like fixed milk price or futures, sort of made a comment about that, but do you utilise that or do you have a view around that from a business point of view?
I have dabbled in it. It's just a bit of a gamble. Didn't have a real clear strategy. It worked in our favour, luckily, but yeah, no, I don't really use it. Don't have a real need for it. We're not real exposed to that cost structure. So like if we're in a riskier position, maybe I'd use it more. But yeah, I'm scared it's a shorting position, isn't it? And you have to be better than average to win in a shorting game. I'm probably lower than average.
Two questions I wanted to ask one now. You were just saying a few minutes ago there that most of your costs are cow related. In other words, you're saying most of your costs on the farm here are variable costs, which would be very opposite to the way the vast bulk of people think, who think they give most of their costs are fixed, so the more milk I can get, the lower my costs go. How did you arrive at that position? I say it's opposite to what most people think.
Yeah, I just point out that we're interested in this, so like the biggest cost to us isn't displayed up here. So yeah, that's pretty well fixed for us. Yeah, the ones in farm working expenses certainly are variable. Yeah.
And the second part was you've got one of your goals is you're strongly financially. As everyone probably guessed, you're very understated. It's kind of yours like easy, but a lot of it isn't, especially at a low stocking rate. But how across the financial side are they? I know a lot of people have someone else doing the numbers and that. Like how yourself and Emma, how close to the numbers are you? What do you do to actually? Do you set the accountant to pay all your GST and at the end of the year he tells you that you've made money or lost money? Explain exactly what you do with numbers and how long you've been doing it that way.
Yeah. We use Xero pretty much. Emma's doing more and more. I guess I come from a mother as an accountant, so there's always been a really strong focus on the financials. Fella's Dutch, so strong cost control there. So we do. I guess we do everything. Pay the GST, try minimise the accountant costs as much as possible. So pretty well handling what they need at the end of the financial year and do our own depreciation sheet and move assets off that, add assets.
Just as a follow-up, and I know there is a question there, but in terms of when you set the budget at the beginning of the season, the monitoring you do throughout, how do you do you stick to it? Is that like a hard line, this is the budget, or how do you make decisions about it?
So the end of the budget.
So you set the budget at the beginning of the year, I guess, and then things happen, and so how much do you stick to that budget? How do you make decisions to say, oh, actually there is this nice salesperson coming to the farm and how do you go about those sticking to the budget, I guess?
Normally only do budgets, unless it's wrong, when Brendan asks. Brendan's our bank manager. But yeah, don't follow it to the, I don't look at it every month and say, oh shit, we were 1 cent more or 2 cents more on this. Just sort of look at everything as a cost benefit on its own thing and whether we think it's going to add profit to the business or not, and just, don't get too tied up in the numbers.
But still you have a very good idea of where the budget is going.
Yeah.
And,
we do follow it. Yeah. I think, going back to the interest not being in there, it's sort of like we have an advantage of being on that tier 1 farm. Or like farm working expenses when you compare it to other people, so we pay more in interest, but we can have a lower farm working expense.
Do you like or float, Pete?
Float. Yeah.
All interest.
Yeah, I don't understand the.
it was about the interest rate, sorry, fixed or floating.
Yeah, I don't understand the game enough to be going in and out, I guess. Floating, but yeah, we're happy to go with it.
Perfect, yes.
I'm keen to understand, the average farmer's seen rampant increase in farm working expenses. You can see most people's drop back 20 cents in the year you're talking about here. What's been the trade secret there around just staying true to your core cost?
Yeah, I think that season drop was a little bit, I think going into 23, 24, we had like quite a low forecasted price, like 660 or something, pretty early on. And so like we wanted to put a new yard on the cow shed, and so we knew that was coming as well. So we were just really tightening up to save money for that, and reduce costs where we could. Didn't get any steps for a year. So that, I guess.
What are you doing? How are you engaging your team in sort of managing those costs? Because there's got to be a little bit more than just. There's got to be lots of little things everywhere that the guys are doing, or you've implemented, which is now just second nature to the guys. What are the little things which I know you guys just think that's what you do, but for a lot of people, and all that look at the average figures, a lot of people just aren't aware or aren't able to sort of achieve it.
Yeah, I think it definitely is lots of small things, and everyone's like pretty hands-on, and we try to do a lot of things ourselves, I guess. And like the more you do yourself, it's not just in the R&M column, it's like throughout that budget. I don't know, de-wanting calves, so does it cost now $8 a calf or so? Selling heifers, those are all in animal health. Just by doing it ourselves, we've pulled back a bit there. Little things like servicing the cut removals yourself, or just service the pivots ourselves.
Brilliant. While you guys think about some other questions, just looking, so you've been progressing the system, I guess you're comfortable where you are at the moment, I guess. What is next for you? What is the next opportunity? Is it continuing to perfection the system you're running? Is it more opportunity, and perhaps some of the things that Tony was mentioning there on, is it an opportunity to lift perhaps pasture a bit more? What do you think are the opportunities for the farm?
Yeah, I think there's definitely always opportunities, and what excites me at the moment would probably be breeding cows, trying to improve that. I think there's lots of potential there. I think as a whole for the industry, we haven't really put much selection pressure on especially the dam side. LIC's probably been doing a good job on the size side, but like even this graph here with the like the country average 6 weeks been coming up, you know, slowly, and like there's more tools now, there's 6 seamen. It's just like you're giving everyone more ability to have selection pressure. Cow numbers aren't increasing. You're not just trying to rear everything anymore. So I think there's definitely potential there. Yeah.
Any other areas? Wintering, anything else you think
Yeah,
could?
it's, fine tuning, I guess. Regrassing, putting good grasses in. That's the same as breeding cows, breeding better grasses. Trust that they're, you know, providing us with better seed each time.
What, anything else? Anything else you want to know? Who beats that operating expenses per kilo of meat solids? It's pretty amazing.
Can I just ask,
Absolutely.
what would you say is like your biggest foreseeable challenge ahead of you, and what are you kind of thinking in the back of your head what you're going to do to implement or tackle it?
Question was biggest, sorry.
Very broad question.
No, biggest challenge that he sees ahead of it, and how is he thinking of tackling it? So that's a very paraphrase.
I'm using my material that I was saving for later, but like I looked at it probably 4 years ago, like from a sustainability view. What's the biggest issue or most material issues? What's most likely to have an impact and biggest importance to the business? And what stood out was methane, like everyone's talking about it. And so how can we have an influence on that? We can't like rely on the industry developing tools. We don't have much influence on that, not playing a role in that. So like really genetics was the one lever we could pull to start making steady progress to make it easier when you know, limits or restrictions do arrive. So we've been, last 4 years pretty heavily trying to increase our genetic gain.
Can I also just go back to the staff? Do you...
Sorry, it's a mic there so everybody can hear.
15 minutes of fame. Just with your staff, like obviously you've got some pretty loyal, you know, team members and bits and pieces, and you're able to look after a lot of the ongoing repairs and maintenance on farm yourselves. Does that mean that you've put a lot of investment into the team in terms of like upskilling and training, and you're kind of like seeing those investments come to fruition now, and that you're able to kind of keep a fairly closed circuit?
I think, maybe with that is, a lot of it is like the longevity or how long staff hang around or turnover. Yeah, so the longer everyone's here, the more everyone learns on how we do everything, and the easier it is. Yeah.
Yep. Will.
Just wondering what sort of response are you seeing from your regrassing? Like how much more are you growing per hectare from those paddocks when you're regrassing?
I don't know if you heard earlier, but we don't measure our growth. But yeah, my eye definitely looks better. Normally you're like sorting out another issue, like might be a bit of a compaction issue in part of the paddock, or I think Fraser might be able to tell you some sort of gains we can expect. Better clovers, I've been told.
Has there been a focus on young stock over the last number of 3 years? There's been big gains on the farm. Is that through young stock, or where is that focused on?
Yeah, I think the young stock, how long we had that, like a year and a half in our control. So Emma does a great job rearing them, but from that stage they leave the farm to when they're coming back, it's probably only really seen the impact now, or only starting to see the impact of that now, having that control. We looked at the heifers in the herd this season. That was like the first crop of heifers. They were 23 solids higher after the first, after the February herd test than last year's average. The herd was like 4 solids down. binder. So there was a gain. I don't know how much of that was genetics and how much of that was looking after the young stock and how much of that was just good luck. I don't know.
Yesterday I was here helping set up, and I noticed how great your pastures were with really good clover, and you told me a little secret which you might want to share with everyone else, that you've got such good clovers in your pastures.
I don't know, I get good advice from Fraser Harrison sitting there. But yeah, I think the sowing depth is really important, and not sowing the clovers too deep. Yeah. So he will give you a stat on that, but it's saying like it's 2 centimetres best.
But yeah, I guess I'm coming back to that question as well that asked about even coming back to that question about how much pasture peat grows, and it probably comes down to a couple of those little pieces that Peter says they don't do much different. There is a pasture trial that literally gets cut every single round. So there's a dozen different cultivars in there that get assessed, you know, for every month of the year, sort of, you know, day in, day out, I suppose. So there's actually a fair bit of data informing those decisions and sort of understanding how much more different cultivars can grow in that system. And then, yeah, just that clover one is massive. So there's little bits and pieces like, you know, the fact that you do a lot of drilling yourself, focusing on attention to detail as to how can you actually get that clover established initially. So drilling depth is really, really important. Timing of planting is really important. Management of that new pasture initially after planting is really important. So just fine-tuning all those little things that help get those clovers established, which in turn help you grow more, help you increase quality, etc., etc. So I guess, yeah, there's a few bits and pieces that are in there that aren't, that, you know, sort of probably say, oh, I don't do anything differently, but there is a whole lot of data that informs a truckload of those decisions. It's not just, yep, I'll grab a bag off the shelf and throw it in the ground. There's a few bits.
You had a stat on if you went from 2 centimetres to say 5 centimetres, is it 10% every centimetre or?
Well, I don't know if that was my stat to be
yeah,
there, but I guess that, but there is a truckload of work with legumes, and I guess increasing legume proportion in a pasture sport is massively meaningful. And if we talk about genetic gain on white clover as an example, we spend a lot of time talking about what grass to put in, but we know by cultivar selection on white clover, we can literally make up to 3 tonne difference of pasture growing, and it's not just, it's a double-edged sword because it's not just more quantity, it's also quality. You know, it's more nitrogen fixing, it's more ME in the diet, it's more dry matter growing. So I guess yeah, it's cultivar selection for that white clover piece. If you told me you could grow 3 tonne more just by cultivar selection, I mean, who wouldn't want to know that, I suppose? So yeah, there's a few bits and pieces there that if you can increase white clover content from 5% across the platform to 30, that's massive. That's absolutely massive. So, and there's quite a lot of literature out there now on white clover and red clover, sort of around those different what they can add, and it is significant.
G'day. You said that you only measure the residuals when they come out. What does that? Do you just look at it and look for something, or do you have a number for that?
No, I just look at it. Oh, yeah.
Could you put a number on it, or?
Yeah, I'd say they're pretty consistently 1,500. Yeah.
Would you rather go lower than that or above it?
Probably depends on time of year a lot. Yeah, it's like in spring I think residuals are like hugely important, and then as soon as you get it wrong you've got to use that topper, don't you? This time of year it's important as well. But say if we left 1,600, they're probably going to get that 100 next time, is my thinking.
And also going in, would you like to keep it like around 3,000 or less, or?
Yeah, I just found with our grass species, we're all diploids, so we like enjoy lower covers than a tetraploid. We just do more milk with a lower cover. Yeah.
I suspect part of the reason you're not scoring is you've not had to report to anyone a monthly report, a weekly report like a lot of people here, and I guess that's perhaps why it's that, but, and I know we've sat down before and it's actually you, and we'll get to that because I'm running the pasture section, but you are out there a lot, so it's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I think everyone's out there a lot. Like, how many times does someone drive to a paddock to get the cows out or set up a break, or constantly driving around the farm shifting K-line? So everyone sees it a lot. Yeah.
So it's just not it's not numerical, but it's done there with detail. Yeah.
So like the first herd, it's got 20 paddocks. And if you're grazing paddock to paddock to paddock, you can look 3 or 4 paddocks ahead, and you can get a pretty good understanding what's coming, can't you? Pretty quickly. Yeah.
What you do have to report, though, your mother's an accountant, so in terms, I bet you had to report your numbers in detail, and so the question is around a little bit around that sort of benchmarking that, you know, you're not operating in a vacuum. Did you benchmark some, or what, when?
Yeah, I think until we took over the farm, definitely those first 5 seasons, we'd do a spreadsheet on Excel and compare us between the farms, so Steve, the airport farm, and Collie now, and then it would have those 5 other benchmarking farms that were around then, LUDF, Aidan, Oamaru, what was there, Sleaze, we haven't really been doing it, no. We've done a couple of dairy base things like this, and yeah, sort of think we're still on the right track, so we haven't really had to focus on it, I don't think, on the benchmarking yet, but it's definitely good benchmark, I believe. Yeah.
Just coming right back to your mowing, do you cut behind or in front, and with that, because you don't measure your grass, is there a particular time you start mowing, or do you pick paddocks, or is it every paddock before the cows go into for 2 rounds straight? Just the thoughts on that and keeping the quality there.
Yeah, so this season doing more mowing, it was pre-graze mowing, and it was like that first round from like probably would it be 4th round or something, 28th of October or around that heating date, just like that whole round. And we might have missed the round and then did the next whole round pretty well. Then just did a paddock here and there after that, yeah. So if we got it wrong, or it might just be the back of the paddock, or. But yeah, definitely heavily at the start, around the heating date.
Thank you. I was just, so firstly, echo the gentleman's comments earlier. Great to have a day, and thank you very much for your time and the effort you put in. I just had a question around fertility and your fertiliser program. A lot of that grass species and other things were a big part of it, and a big number of its in fertiliser budgets. Also, what you're doing there.
Yep. So I guess like the farm had pretty good OLSP levels when we arrived. So pretty early on we dropped the amount of phosphorus we're putting on. We look at have an overseer report, look at that and go off of that, what our inputs need to be. So probably putting on half the amount of phosphorus a lot of people think maintenance is, and we've done that for probably 5 years, and our OLSP is still slowly tracking up. Yeah, so we just don't put on heat. I think it's about 16 or 14 units of feed we put on a year. We've put on quite a bit of lime, like our pHs are quite high, so I've really tried to focus our spending on that, get that right. Been putting on a little bit more potassium lately, just trying to drive the clover growth with that.
And there's a table actually that shows the fertilizer, and we're going to touch a bit more on the next session as well, but great question. Yeah, significant cost. Any final question on around what we've been talking about now? Anything else about the system? Anything else about the costs?
Hi. In terms of milk production, what's the range of your cows? Are they young, or most of them are old cows?
If you look on the Minder report, it gives you like a spread of where your age group should be. It's probably slightly younger than that, but it's we've like had a pretty consistent replacement rate this whole time at say 23%. So yeah, it's pretty standard, but it would be slightly younger than average, I'd say. Yeah. We didn't bring a heap of heifers in 1 year. Yeah.
So obviously very strong performing business. What's your sort of ambition to grow, and if that's into like second dairy unit, what do you think would be the things that are very easy to replicate, and do you think you'd have to sort of implement a slightly bit more systemized too, as you'd be spread a bit more thinly? You don't have to answer the second one if you're not going to buy another dairy farm.
Yeah. Not too sure. We're just focusing on repaying debt at the moment. Yeah, I think it can be replicated. Yeah, I mean, Matt and Kylie are doing a great job at replicating a very similar system. Yeah. What else can I say about that? Yeah.
I couldn't hear that well. Could you? Sorry. Sorry. Brilliant. I think we are kind of fitting on next session's time, but we have covered a few things here, so probably okay to go another 5 minutes, looking at the boss here. You mentioned about the future challenges when you were asked, and you mentioned greenhouse gases. I just wanted to just point your attention to this graph here, which is behind Peter. This is from the Insights report, and basically it's greenhouse gases per kilo of milk solids, comparing this farm with the average. And the numbers is not probably the key thing I wanted to focus on, so the farm is performing quite well. Still there is a bit of tidy up on numbers. I think that goes into the Insights report, we're getting better there. The main thing I wanted to point out is that the system that Peter is running, and the comments he mentioned about the focus on performance per animals, reducing the feed that goes into maintenance, because as we know, for greenhouse gases, methane is a key one, not the only one, but the key one, and that is driven by how much feed the animals eat. There is a lot of investment in research to try and sort that out, but at the moment, every kilo of dry matter the animals eat will produce methane to a kind of a standard amount. So that efficiency that Peter was talking about around making production from a bigger proportion of the feed is actually, and that's achieved by good production per animals, good genetics, good repro, because it accounts for everything. So young stock, cows in winter, so everything that you need to produce the milk will contribute to that dry matter that will contribute to methane. So that efficiency that Peter was talking about is also having that positive impact on lower greenhouse gases per kilo of milk solids. So it's probably just supporting what you were saying there, Peter, and it is shown on the numbers that we have there. And just another quick comment on, or another, perhaps even a question to you, another challenge or future challenge or potential challenge could be the environmental, and in this area, if it is Canterbury, nitrogen loss. What's your thoughts on that, and what are the tools in the toolbox for your system for that?
Yeah, I think that...
Sorry, I wrapped the two things together, but...
I think the low stocking rate system is set up well for nitrogen losses. It's been part of the reason why we haven't gone higher stocking rate. It's been, like before that nitrogen cap come in, you could put on a heap of urea and grow the feed and probably do quite a profitable system. But the other parts of that was what are the tools. I guess there's a few tools. Ecotane's one of them. We've done a bit of work with that and figured out a way that can work in our system. spread it through the fert spreader, mix it with maintenance fert, put on like a kg of seed per hectare, and then it's like no cost in putting it on, know what the seed's worth, $30. So $30 times a kg, $30 a hectare, times that by 300 hectares, it's at $9 grand a year. We could have the whole farm probably at 10% plantain. Yeah, so, and I understand that we could reduce our end losses at 10%. So it's quite an easy way to, quite an easy tool.
Yeah. You have figured it out because you have used it before on the farm, so you know how to make it work, which is great.
Yeah, the struggle is getting enough in the pasture to make it effect. But yeah, it seems to fill in the gaps real well. So, but you're constantly putting the seed on once a year. It'll just fill in any gap, and it definitely comes through. Yeah, and it loves broadcasting. That makes it real simple.
Perfect.
Sorry, here's another question. You may understand better than I know the direction we're supposed to travel is, or two directions. One is lower emissions intensity, and in my head I always thought that if it was forced on me, that would mean I'd have to have less cows, do more milk, and that would, in your classic example here, you've got less cows per hectare doing a very high production per cow, and your emissions intensity isn't like, to me it doesn't appear to be like, I don't understand why. Do you understand why you're not a lot lower in your intensity? Like you're doing what I thought was what you may have to do, but...
Yeah, I don't know that number real well, not at all. The other number was that one we've been dealing with recently, and it's like you have to be below 690 to get the payment. I think we were like 730, so we were pretty good. And then we got penalised by having shout outs go out off the farm to put pivots on. So we got a plus 40 from that, from land use change. But yeah, I know, I definitely see what you're saying. So it probably comes back to how efficient you are with pasture even, isn't it? Maybe we could be more efficient.
But he's definitely efficient per kilo of maize solids. So yeah, you're right. But then the way it is accounted for, it's a few other things that affect the number. But definitely the efficiency per animal is what drives that lower intensity in terms of greenhouse gases. So yeah, definitely in the right way.
Sorry, is the intensity of emissions intensity a lot lower here? I thought it wasn't, am I mistaken?
It's lower than the average. I wouldn't drill too much into, because sometimes the numbers that goes into the insights report don't know how accurate it is. From first principles, what is happening here, which is good efficiency per cow, so a bigger proportion of the feed eaten going into milk production, and that's go from young stock to cows in winter and everything, as I was saying before, is definitely a move in the right direction from a methane point of view. Definitely, it should have a contribution. The number, which I actually cover with the my flip chart there, it is in your report. I don't think that number is right. From the insights report, it's a very high number intensity. Something is weird on the numbers there, so pay no attention to that. What we have there is a comparison of this farm with the average, and it is better, also lower, and everything that is happening on these farms aligns with how we achieve that lower intensity. So yeah, I think it is aligned with the story. Should we see a bigger difference? Potentially, but again, there's a lot in the methodology, and there are a few things that goes in there. I'm mainly talking from a methane point of view because it's the easier one to link with the system. I think now we are a bit over time. Maybe it's just an indication if we're going to stay here or move to the paddock while I do some closing remarks from this session. Maybe a vote with the crowd, see what they want. I don't think it's raining, but it's still quite wet. So just probably as a sum up for this session and as a things for think about in the next sessions now, where we're going to drill even more into the pasture component and on the repro. It just keep thinking about what makes this system so efficient, very aligned to how Peter and Emma want to run the farm, which is with very simple systems, very focused. We probably didn't mention that strongly enough at the beginning, but key focus is on return on assets and return on equity. And for that, on a very well set up farm, which probably has a significant value, requires quite a significant profit per hectare to achieve those returns on the assets that you have invested. And then, yeah, the focus on simple systems. I mean, I think you make them look simpler than what they actually are, Peter. I think there is a lot of management skill sitting, and I'm wondering, how do you do this? How do you do that? Because it is remarkable, the results that you guys achieve. But I guess it's focusing on simple. You know what is important, and you really focus on that. So, I mean, I guess that's part of the results. So the plan now is to, what's the plan? Do we?
Sorry, I'm facilitating the next pasture session. So we've got a pasture session, and we were going to go outside, and we've got a breeding session. We'll be looking at repro and that. That's definitely outside. I'm not going to escape that. The question I have for you is, we can get you to stand up now and have a bit of a stretch of legs for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll do the pasture session in here, and then we will go outside and get wet. So, and there's a progression session after lunch. So, would you rather stand up for a few minutes here, get show of hands, and we'll have the pasture session in here, and we can look at the grass and the cows and we go out. We will go out, or we go out straight after you stand. We won't stand up. We'll just stand up, bugger off, and spend the next hour outside. So your choice, show of hands. Outside now. John Greg, man from Waimea, he doesn't care. Right, and then we'll go after. So, all right, so we'll just take 5 minutes or so, Tim, we'll call you back to order and just stretch your legs for a yak.